Well, the fragile truce between Iran, Israel, and the United States may be entering its most dangerous phase yet. New reports say Washington and Jerusalem are now making their most serious preparations so far for the possibility of renewed military action against Iran, potentially within days as negotiations continue to stall. According to the New York Times, options being discussed go far beyond airstrikes and even include possible commando missions inside Iran to recover highly enriched uranium buried after last year's war. Israeli officials are also warning that they're preparing for another round of fighting that could last days to weeks. And the Israeli prime minister has confirmed to reports that he has spoken with U.S. President Donald Trump just minutes ago about the war with Iran before he plans on convening a limited security discussion this evening. Well, joining us now from the United States is Michael Mulroy, the former U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for the Middle East. Obviously, we're hearing these reports right now. In your opinion, how close are we to renewed fighting with Iran?
So great to be with you. I think we're getting pretty close. You can see a lot of the military posture shifts that we saw before the war started. So back around February 27th and 28th, you see a lot of the air assets leaving, actually, as they want to reposition them into Europe so they're not vulnerable to a counterattack by Iran. So that doesn't mean necessarily it's going to start, but it is something that I think is an indicator that it is. And of course, there's a lot of conversations between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu. So all eyes are looking to see if this is going to start again. And of course, there is the stalled negotiations, which seem to be going nowhere. Another indicator that this war could restart.
These reports that we're seeing mention the possibility of commando operations to recover buried enriched uranium inside Iran. From a military standpoint, how risky and even realistic would an operation like that actually be?
So very risky. These locations are deep inside Iran. It would require not only that these forces fly in, it would likely be one of the most complex special operations missions in history. They could have to stay on the ground for weeks, quite frankly. And they have to potentially build airstrips, bring in earth movers. This material that they want to recover, this highly enriched uranium, is likely buried in the rubble from the attacks the U.S. did on these facilities. So it could take a long time to get to. Obviously, Iran's going to try everything they can to displace them and obviously inflict casualties on the force itself. That will have to be a big coordinated force that goes in there. It would be a serious operation and a very risky decision.
Ultimately, what do you think Trump stands to lose at this point? There have been a lot of reports saying that Trump doesn't want to go back to war, that obviously this is not necessarily the most popular political move, and he's already facing kind of shaky standing when it comes to the public and their view of this war. So how do you think ultimately going back to fighting would impact Trump and his current leadership in the United States?
So very good question. It's a very unpopular war. It started off unpopular and it didn't get any better. And if we go back to war, I imagine it's going to go from 70% disfavored to higher. And of course, if we insert ground forces and there's casualties, it could crater essentially. It's not popular now, but it could essentially crater. So I don't think President Trump wants to go back to war, but essentially Iran has done very little to work these negotiations to a place where he could accept them. They're essentially asking for things that the United States, in some cases, doesn't even have the authority to grant. We don't have the authority to grant Iran sovereignty over an international waterway. It's no more the U.S.'s ability to do that than any other country in the world. So they're so far off in any kind of negotiated into this that it's either the stalemate with the strait being somewhat blocked and obviously the blockade, or it's going to be an escalation. And of course, it's not just going to be the U.S. and Israel taking strikes. Iran's likely going to respond. They might cause all of the concerns on the high cost of energy to go even higher.
The final question that I want to ask you, Michael, is what kind of strikes do you envision on the part of the United States? Obviously, we spoke about these reports of these kind of commando missions, but more broadly, what do you think could play out?
So President Trump has referenced several times destroying the energy making capacity in Iran. So there's, I think, three really major power plants That, of course, is going to be questioned about under international law. Power is needed to run generators. It's needed to run hospitals, desalinization plants, a lot of things that are just for civilians. But that's what he's talked about. He's also talked about bridges. One could make the argument that you need these bridges to move the military around, but also it's commerce. It's civilians use them just as much. So that seems to be where he's focused, at least what he's talking about. So I would look for that. And if this restarts, I imagine some version of that, hopefully attached to military uses, which make them valid targets. But that's likely where this is going.
All right, Michael, I'd like to thank you so much for joining us and giving us your insight.